Hey, welcome in everybody. Listen, OPEC Plus just hit pause. Why oil prices may surprise in 2026. A lot of people are expecting that OPEC Plus, part of the reason that they hit pause is because of a glut. I'm actually going to paint a different scenario, and it's really rooted in the fact that outside of the declaration of cooperation countries, such as OPEC members of OPEC Plus, we actually don't have prices at a level that will add production. So listen, let's go ahead and dive in. So what exactly happened? Oil did extend gains after OPEC Plus pauses in Q1 output. So they agreed to a small output increase in December, and then they paused production hikes for the first quarter of 2026. Now, Trump says he's not considering strikes with Venezuela, but obviously that is something to monitor as well. And there has been increased activity between Ukraine and Russia impacting oil assets, plus sanctions, which stay tuned every single day. So that is actually the headline or what actually happened. Now let's dive in a little bit deeper. So OPEC just blinked again, and it's not what you think. So the breaking news, the output hike is paused for Q1. So they have released a lot of the barrels, but not all of them. So the current price, WTI is sitting at 61, Brent is hovering around 65, and the market reaction is kind of neutral. This wasn't expected or unexpected from the market. So markets are remaining eerily calm when it comes to what is actually happening. So OPEC Plus announced it's pausing production hikes for the next quarter, keeping nearly 1.2 million barrels a day offline. So this isn't a minor adjustment, it's strategic and it holds a deeper signal. So that is actually what we're looking at, which is the planned output and the actual output. So um, now the official story versus reality. OPEC's explanation is that the attributes to the pause are seasonal weakness, which is true in the winter time period, and demand patterns. And the real picture: members are still recovering from overproduction cuts and facing significant capacity constraints that limit their ability to ramp up quickly. So there is also indications of rising inventories. There has been inventory builds. However, you got to look at the crude oil inventories, but you also got to look at the product inventory. So there's a different lens there, and I'm going to talk through that towards the end. So now it is forecast to be oversupplied in 2026, but the barrels aren't showing up. So here's the real dynamics at play. Russia's challenge, exports hit new U.S. sanctions, and the strategic Baltic Sea refinery strike, constraining Moscow's ability to meet quotas. So that is one thing, but we're gonna dive a little bit deeper into the actual productive capacity of Russia and what is actually happening. Um, UAE UAE and others, UAE and Saudi Arabia, those are the ones that have taken the brunt of most of the cuts, but they're quietly defending the price floors and managing market optics while avoiding the headlines and about production struggles. Now, this is where it gets interesting. When you look into 2026, there's a lot of focus on non-OPEC supply growth. It's not going to happen, especially not at these price levels. So the demand reality, consumption is holding firmer than the outlook and then the bearish headlines suggest. This creates a this creates a tighter market than expected. Current price level is 61, and the volume that remains offline is 1.2 million barrels a day. But I'm going to show you something that is going to contrast with that. So let's actually dive in a little bit deeper. So we're going to go through the presentation, then we're going to dive into some of the charts. So the pause isn't a bearish signal, it's a volatility trigger. waiting to detonate. And I think it is going to detonate in 2026, and we're going to see exploding prices in 2026. The consensus of abundant cheap oil in 2026 may be the most crowded. So that is kind of the consensus view out there. In my opinion, it's just purely wrong. Supply constraints, geopolitical friction, and demand resilience are converging into a perfect storm. And this could catch the market off guard completely. So what are the key takeaways? Output is lagging. Production continues to fall short of targets. Okay, these are production targets and quotas despite the official pause announcement. Sanctions are tightening against Russia, and there is extending influence out there. However, that is not really impacting or dissuading Russia from producing. It is actually just dissuading the trade flows of where those barrels go. Market complacency, consensus bearishness creates the opportunity for informed traders. This is where we're going to take you. So inside Rogue Radar, which I'm going to give you a peek inside, is going to give you everything that you need. So let's actually take a look at it. If you click through to the link, you're going to go to this page and you can actually sign up for a 14-day free trial. But before we get to Rogue Edge, which is our premium product, let me show you a little bit about what is happening at a higher level. So when we look at the world supply and world production, there's two basic supply sources. And when you look at supply and demand, you're going to come up with different numbers depending on if you're looking at OPEC or IEA or EIA. So all of these have different figures. I like using OPEC as kind of a baseline. They have a very good insight and their reports are phenomenal, and our AI actually reads their reports every single month and gives you a summary of what is happening. So the key clarification on the supply side, okay, demand side is going to be dictated by economy. So economy is going to be a variable. So you're going to have to watch that constantly. But when we're looking at non-declaration of cooperation, so that is another terminology. It's synonymous with OPEC Plus. It's not 100% aligned, but for the most part, you can think about the declaration of cooperation. So out of 105 million barrels a day, 43 come from OPEC Plus. So the current supply-demand balance indicates a slight surplus in the market. So demand for current production is 43, but the current demand for declaration of cooperation is only 42.5. So there's a slight oversupply by the numbers. However, we are in a sluggish period right now, and I'm going to show you a little bit more and a little bit deeper, but if you want to dive in deep, you can actually sign up for the 14-day free trial, because all of this is at your fingertips to where you're going to have my thought of the day, today's update, market summary, fundamentals, technicals, everything that you're going to want to know about the oil and gas market. But let's dive in a little deeper with Rogue Edge. So why do I think $60 crude is not going to provide any non-declaration of cooperation countries' supply growth? One of the key reasons is the United States. This is how many barrels are added on a monthly basis, and as you can see, this trend is going down. So we are close to only providing 20,000 barrels a day of new production each month, because every month there is a declining production. So every oil and gas well declines. Day one is the most that it's ever going to produce without mechanical influence. And put simply, 90% of that production is gone after 12 months. So when you look at it on the holistic basis, you have declines and you have new production. So every single month, crude oil is declining in the United States by around 650,000 barrels a day. So every month, 650,000 out of the 13.5 million disappear. What that puts pressure on is we need to add barrels to the mix. And we're currently adding 670,000. Thus, 20,000 barrels a day is all that we're adding to the mix. So that means every single month there has to be new production to offset those declines. So the US is not going to add to that equation. Now you can add in Brazil, Guyana, and Argentina. Those are other areas that we can look at the supply side, but I'm not going to focus on that today. I'm actually going to focus on OPEC. So let's look at the supply side so that we can actually see some of the history. So a lot of people talk about quotas, they talk about targets. We actually look at what actually happens. So when we're looking at the production, and we did increase this most recent month, which was September, which is the latest month published. So per September, 36.5. But when we look at that versus history, we don't come up with an overwhelmingly big increase. This is a slight increase, but versus 36, 35.9, when we look at each individual country as it stands, let's actually take a look at this. Saudi Arabia did come up, but as you can see, there's still barrels offline with Saudi Arabia. So that is one to watch. Russia is continuing to produce less and less. So their production capacity has been dropping over time. UAE, this has been going up. So these are the countries to watch because those are the ones with productive capacity. If you look at every other OPEC country, you're not seeing growth. So let's put it this way. Let's take off Saudi Arabia, and where is United Arab Emirates? Right there. So when we look at the top line right here, we can come up with the everything versus, let's do it versus earlier this year. So we did, every other country accounted for roughly 300,000 barrels. So 300,000 barrels when OPEC has increased millions of barrels. So what does this mean? This means that if the price doesn't pick up, non-OPEC supply is not going to pick up, and OPEC is going to be in the driver's seat on adding new barrels into the equation. So I think we're prepared for a potential price shock on oil for 2026. Not a financial advisor. This is not trading advice. Read all the disclaimers below. This is just my opinion. And so take my opinion for what it is. But if you want to learn a little bit more about the markets for oil, for natural gas, come join us, energyrogue.com, 14-day free trial for Rogue Radar, and I hope to see you inside.